Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Walter, and we're back here to talk about dating once again. Now, I'm no expert on dates, far from it in fact. But there's certain things we should all be able to recognize won't be good on a date, like being rude to your servers, or complaining about your ex the whole time. Complaining about anything the whole time, I guess. There's plenty of time to complain in a relationship, so there's no need to start on the first date. Now, Reddit DatingHell is the place where you too can post all your stories about horrible dates you've been on. They don't have to be first dates, but most of them are. Anyway, let's get started with worst dates from Reddit DatingHell. This first one is pretty funny. What do you mean you don't have Halo 3? This was pre-corona, just last year. I, 18 female at the time, had just started college and I started talking to a guy, 19 male. He was awkward, kind of cute, and really into gaming, and I liked gaming too, so I decided to give it a shot. We picked a cool gaming pub that let you play video games while waiting for your food. Prior to going, we had agreed that he would pay for the food and I would pay the tip. I had taken the time to pick out a cute outfit for the date. I did my makeup and all that, but when I see him, it appears all he's done is throw a blazer over his usual attire, nerd t-shirt and joggers. So we walk to the place, sit down, and all is well. We start looking through the game menu to pick out something to play. They had Halo 3, so that is what we picked. The waitress comes over, but she says they don't have Halo 3, but they have Halo 4. I'm fine with this, but I can immediately see my date deflate and look visibly annoyed. She starts up our screen and gives us our controllers, and we start. As soon as she's out of earshot, he begins complaining. Why would they have Halo 3 on the menu, but not have it? This game is so much worse. It's the worst Halo. The entire time I keep responding with, well, let's just play this, or let's just try to have fun with it. But he couldn't take my hint. Eventually, he says, I'm going to ask why they don't have Halo 3. I, of course, tried to tell him that there was no reason to, and we should just try to make the best out of playing Halo 4. He ignores me and flags the waitress down. He proceeds to ask her in a condescending tone, why do you not have Halo 3 if it's on the menu? I avoid looking at the poor waitress. I just wanted to sink into the ground at that moment. The waitress responded in a way that makes me think she must deal with this kind of crap a lot. She says, well, sometimes the games get stolen or lost, so that's why the menu isn't always accurate. We continue playing the dreaded Halo 4, now with my date saying, that's so weird they don't have Halo 3. I'm going to buy them a copy of Halo 3 so this doesn't happen again. All while I'm still trying to enjoy the game. Yeah, see, he's tanking this date for no reason here. It really isn't going to change anything by complaining about it, and it's really not something worth complaining about in the first place. I'm pretty sure the video games were supposed to be secondary to the date. Eventually our food arrived. I guess my date thought it was a brilliant idea to order the spiciest thing on the menu. Now I was trying not to look at him as snot and tears were dripping down his face. His food was also greasing up his hands. When the check came, he tried to pay the entire bill, including the tip, and I had to argue with him. I pointed out that we had agreed pre-date I would pay the tip, and that I had broken a 50 for this, and he said his mom told him to be a gentleman and pay for everything. He relented and I paid the tip, and I made sure that poor waitress got extra. While the date was awkward, sometimes your brain falls out of your butt when you're attracted to someone, and I chalked up his behavior to him never going on a date before and not knowing how to act, and him being a bit socially awkward. I was willing to go on a second date with him to see what would happen. He ended up telling his friends and family that I was his girlfriend, without ever consulting / us having the what are we talk, the night of our first date. This put me in a bad position, so I just accepted it for about 2 weeks before his immature behavior sent me over the edge and I broke things off with him. God, he had such a chance too. She even liked the fact that he was kind of awkward. You know, until he turned out to be really awkward. As for saying he had to pay for everything because his mom told him to be a gentleman, yeah, that might not be a great line to use on a date either. This next story is about a nice guy, so crossover episode or something? Don't go out with a nice guy, not even once. So this is from about 4 to 5 years ago when I was in grad school. I've always had a lot of difficulty navigating the dating world, and at least I finally know why. I'm on the autism spectrum, so I have a lot of difficulty with eye contact, interpreting body language / facial expressions, and reading people's intentions. However, at the time I didn't know I was on the spectrum, so I was super self-conscious about my lack of dating experience. Was constantly questioning myself, felt stupid, and believed anything that went wrong was all my fault. After some encouragement from friends, I signed up for OkCupid and decided to give it a try. I received lots of requests for hookups, which I ignored because that's definitely not what I was looking for. I had some conversations with a few guys, but they were only short-lived. Finally, this guy, let's call him R, messaged me and seemed super interesting and charming. His messages were littered with compliments that were nice to hear, seeing that I had really low self-esteem. He also worked as a musician. I was going to school for music, so it was nice to have that in common. I decided to give it a whirl, and we met up for coffee. We get to the coffee shop, and he's waiting with a huge bouquet of roses. Good lord, guys, please don't show up for a first date with someone you'd never met with roses. Most women would find that so weird. Spectacle usually makes me very uncomfortable, but I thought the gesture was very thoughtful. He pulled the chair out, gesturing me to take a seat, and we began our date. After a series of compliments, he began to list all of the things he absolutely would not tolerate in a relationship because he was worth more than that. I kind of figured, whoa, buddy, slow down, this is date 1, but I also figured it seemed perfectly reasonable to state what you're looking for and not looking for. Anyway, the date ended, he paid for the coffee, I thanked him, and agreed to a second date. The coffee date had to be very brief because we had a limited time to meet that day, and I didn't feel I could get a solid yes or no yet. Once I get home, R sends me a text saying that he had a great time and he looks forward to our next date. I say thank you, that I look forward to it too, and then went to bed. The next day I go to class as usual. I put my phone on silent or turn it off when I'm in class because, well, I'm in class. Once I have my first break, I look at my phone to see dozens of texts from R. They started with good morning and more compliments, but as they progressed they sounded very angry that I wasn't responding. I texted him back apologizing, saying that I wasn't ignoring him and that I simply could not text him while I was in class. He called BS on it, saying it's not that hard to send a text, and essentially said something along the lines of, I really should bail on you for being so rude and inconsiderate, but I'll give you another chance since you're so pretty and seem apologetic. He also went on about how he was such a nice guy and all he wants is to have his kindness and effort be appreciated. Since I assume everything is always my fault, I apologized. Yeah, there's a reason this is a red flag. If this is how he acts after a single short coffee date, just imagine the kind of controlling asshole he'd turn into after he's locked into the relationship. What, does he expect her to just text him all day? It's stupid. Our second date comes and we agreed to do something outdoors since I was dog sitting. He said he liked dogs and that he didn't mind, so we went to an outlet mall where they had plenty of places to sit outside. The whole time we were walking, I noticed that he refused to walk next to me and mostly stood very close behind me. He kept shifting around and I noticed he'd move himself to essentially act as a shield anytime another guy was anywhere near me. I asked him about it and he responded saying he's old school and was simply interested in looking after my safety. Seemed odd since I'm literally walking a large German Shepherd mix in a public place and in broad daylight. I felt like I was made out of glass the whole time. He was walking so weird that she had to ask him why he was doing it. Imagine how that looks to anyone else. And is saying you're old-fashioned a red flag itself? I'm not sure, so let me know what you think in the comments if you want. Once we get to where we were eating and sit down, R opens with a barrage of concerns he has about me. He starts by saying I've insulted him by accepting all of his compliments without returning the favor with compliments of my own. He said he didn't feel he deserved this because of how nice he had been to me. Being the naive idiot I was, I thought it somehow made sense. I internally screamed at myself for being rude since R's not the first person to accuse me of being rude for something I didn't even realize I was doing. He also said that since this was date number 2, he was making an investment. Yes, he actually said that. And that I needed to do the same. He told me that even though we weren't official, that he expected any woman he went on more than one date with to be exclusively seeing him and nobody else. He didn't want to put in the money and effort if it meant she'd only pick someone else. I was literally being talked to like I was a child. I didn't say anything at the time because I actually felt like I was in the wrong and completely froze. Once we finished eating, I offered to split the bill with him since I didn't want him to feel he needed to pay for everything. I told him it would make me feel better knowing I contributed. R responded by saying no and that I could contribute by showing him the appreciation he deserved. After the date ended, I felt completely burned out and exhausted. Yeah, God forbid he doesn't pay for everything so he can throw it back in her face later. That is the method of the nice guy. A fucking investment. I'm sure that one just makes all the girls wet. A few days later, I went to lunch with some of my guy friends who had lots of questions about my date. I didn't really want to talk about it since I was embarrassed and confused, but agreed because they all seemed so excited. I asked for as much dating advice as I could since I felt like I had no idea what I was doing and that I felt like I was disappointing R. When they asked me to elaborate, I explained what happened. They seemed shocked and super upset. Again, I thought it was me, but to my surprise, they were all pissed at him and explained that this was super predatory behavior. They explained to me what a nice guy was, and that R was trying to weaponize my misplaced guilt and issues with low self-esteem to paint himself as this amazing man that's being victimized and taken for a ride. Needless to say, I told R that I didn't think it was going to work out and no longer wanted to see him. Of course, he complained that nice guys finish last and that I wasted his time and money by leading him on. I'm much more verbal with friends now if something doesn't feel right, and aware that if you have to constantly talk about how nice you are, you're probably putting up a front. So yeah, nice guy. Never again. Yeah, there we go. Shoutouts to actually having a good friend group. A lot of people in these stories don't. Okay, so finally we're going to cover a short story where it's actually a guy going on a date with a woman. I don't avoid these stories, they just don't get posted nearly as often, so I had to look around for them. Even the bartender knew a catfishing. This happened several years ago. I started talking to a nice girl on Match. She seemed to have a good head on her shoulders, she had many of the same interests, and she had pictures that showed she was fit and attractive. There were a few small red flags like taking a long time to respond during an active conversation, not having a cell phone, around 2004 so not a huge deal, and being a little wishy-washy on meeting. Eventually though, we agreed to meet at 7 p.m. at a bar called The Slab. Now, the way The Slab is set up, there's one entry door. When you walk in, the bar is to your right and the counter runs away from the door for about 20 feet and then takes a right corner. I arrived about 15 minutes early and took a seat at the corner of the bar where I could see the door. The bartender came up and asked if I wanted anything to drink. I decided to play the gentleman and order a diet soda until my date came. And then we could see about anything harder. Don't want to be tipsy when you meet. 7 rolls around, then 7:05, 7:10, 7:15. I decided to give until 7:20 and then leave and send her a message to see what was up. Remember, this was the days of flip phones and limited to no data. 7:20 comes and goes and I start getting ready to leave. I ask the bartender for the tab and she looks at me sadly like, "You poor SOB, you got stood up, sad trombone." And then I hear it. "Are you Mike blank?" coming from right behind me. I said yes and started to turn around as she said, "I'm Sarah." I was then confronted with a morbidly obese woman who was wearing a yellow muumuu with pink flowers, had hair so greasy it was leaving stains on her clothes, food stains down her front, and a rich brown substance that appeared to be thick barbecue sauce all around her mouth and on her cheeks. I should probably note at this point that at The Slab you are lucky to get ketchup on a plate of cold fries. Definitely not the kind of joint to carry barbecue sauce. The first thought going through my now short-circuiting brain was that I had been watching the door, and this woman had not entered since I arrived. This means she had been staring at the back of my head for over 30 minutes. I felt a tap on my shoulder and slowly turned my head to see the bartender's face right next to mine. What came out of her mouth was, "You want that drink now, honey?" The comments wanted more of the story. What happened? How did you react? Yeah, half a story. Edit. I'm assuming they banged. The author actually enlightens us. Okay, so the ending. And no, we didn't bang. I always try to be a nice guy, so I agreed to shoot a game of pool with her. It was one of those games where for some reason every shot has to be done from the opposite side of the table as where she was, and every shot she made caused me to move to the other side so I wasn't in her way. The conversation was garbage, and I quickly got the impression that she was not imbued with great intelligence. After the game, I excused myself as the date got started late and my kid's babysitter was going to need to call it a night soon. I went out to my car and she followed me with the blatantly obvious intent of getting a hug and kiss goodnight. I decided to walk between my car's passenger door and the truck parked next to me, and then around to the back of the car to the driver's door, in the hopes of getting into the car before she caught up to me. I got into the driver's seat and she was just kind of standing there in front of my car, saying things like, "We'll talk soon, I had fun, send me a message." The last little thing that happened that night before we parted ways forever was that I put the car in reverse and in my zeal may have pushed a little too hard on the gas. As this was a gravel lot, she ended up wearing half of my parking space. And Finn, thanks for reading. God, 2004, huh? I wasn't even 18 until 2005 for reference. This probably predates the term catfish by quite a bit, but certainly not the concept of it. I don't know what's wrong with these people. Hey, let's just begin this date by telling a blatant lie that he'll know about. Anyway, that's about all the time I have for you today. I don't want to be up until 3 a.m. again. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, please leave a like. If you have something to say, let me hear it in the comments. Comments are never a negative thing, and they're half the fun of making a new video. If you're new here, consider subscribing to see my content more easily. I might be covering dates again in the near future, so let me know if you like this subject. I think I got a lot of positive feedback last time at least. And I also have to thank my generous patrons because my videos are really getting demonetized this week, which always sucks, but I'm not willing to compromise on my language or content because fuck that. Also Amanda Gillies, who somehow didn't make it into my shoutout. It's kinda hit or miss at the beginning of the month for me on Patreon. Anyway, thanks once again for watching. Have a great night, everyone, and remember that sometimes you might just have to put up with Halo 4 instead of embarrassing your date. His mom should have given him that advice on being a gentleman.